Good morning, everybody. My name's Charles Avens. I'm the head of immigration at Collier Bristow. I've had a fantastic opportunity given to me by Ben Small and the Ibenista team recently to take part in their podcast series. This is the Just Jump podcast series, where we were talking about relocation to the UK if you're a US citizen looking to come to the UK. It's been a fantastic opportunity for me to do so, and I really hope you enjoy it and find it fun and informative.
Okay, guys, another cracker for you today. If you are dreaming of working or expanding your business in the UK, this one is for you. We've got an incredible guest, an expert in UK immigration with years of experience helping individuals and companies navigate this complex path. Charles Avens from Collier Bristow, a seasoned professional and your go-to for all things UK immigration. Perhaps you're curious about the ideal time frame for your visa journey. If you're dreaming of crossing borders and making the UK your new home for work and business, stick around. I'm your host, Ben Small. Let's jump to it. Charles, thanks for jumping on.
Thank you very much indeed for having me.
Well, no, real privilege, actually, just because you are my first visa specialist, which is crazy given the amount of people or experts that we talk to that help people move around the world. So mega excited about this. Before we talk shop, is it okay if I dig into a little bit on how you ended up on this path in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. Well, I've been a lawyer for my sins now for probably nearly 15 years. I started my life out as an employment lawyer for 13 and a half years. And I, back in 2015, decided to diversify slightly my expertise with employment and start doing UK immigration work. I had a great opportunity to do that because I had a really top consultant at the time, who was one of the UK's leading immigration lawyers, who taught me on a daily basis UK immigration law. So I had a fantastic start in that, and I've now been doing UK immigration law for nearly 8 years. I ended up heading up the employment and immigration department in my last firm, and I'm now the head of immigration, as I have decided to stop doing employment because I love immigration so much that I'm now the head of immigration for a City of London law firm, Collier Bristow, and I specialize in effectively personal immigration for individuals and families, and also corporate immigration, looking after companies who need assistance with immigration and relocation into the UK.
It's interesting, actually, because as we were lining up this podcast together, it was clear to me as I was going through the different topics we could talk about how many misconceptions there can be around the legal work for visas in the first place. And what I mean by that, obviously, your career path illustrates this perfectly. The crossing between employment law and immigration is actually very similar once you're at a certain level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, employment law dovetails beautifully in with immigration because all the time I'm dealing with moving staff, international staff, into the UK. So you do actually, it's helpful to have a really good understanding of UK employment rules and rights and regulations when you're moving staff into the UK. And so that's in many ways one of the reasons why I ended up diversifying into it, because I got used to deal with a lot of international companies, and they would ask questions and about it because they were bringing staff over, and I would be doing contracts and doing restructuring and so forth for employees, and it was just a natural thing to then be able to talk about how you do the visas and actually the relocation. So my employment expertise really helps with my my immigration. But I mean, it's you're absolutely right. There are a lot of misconceptions about immigration. I think the problem is people, what they read in the papers. I think they see it as it's asylum and deportation and things like that. I mean, we as a city firm don't deal with that area at all. That's very specialized, and there's not the kind of areas that we deal with. We deal with effectively individuals, families, and companies, and it's really moving people into the UK who are of incredible value to the UK. I mean, they are these people coming in are extremely high net worths. They are setting up companies, businesses, bringing money in, paying very large amounts of UK taxes, and effectively, they're a huge boost to the economy and a huge boost to the employment, to part of the UK, because of course they're hiring employees and running businesses. So they're a really valuable resource to the UK. And I think what we read about a lot in the papers and so forth is a very negative side to immigration. But immigration is desperately needed by every country. Needs immigration. It needs new blood, new expertise, new skills, people who want to come here and really contribute to society. That's really needed. It's really needed. It's so valuable. And people kind of miss that because they just read the negative headlines, which is a shame. And I'm if I can dispel those myths, then I'm happy to do so.
Absolutely. I think I'd love to explore that a little bit further with you.
Sure.
I mean, the other side to that coin, now that we're there, I suppose, is understanding the intentions of these individuals, families, and companies that are moving over. So, why are they coming to the UK? What makes the UK such an attractive proposition?
Okay, I get asked that all the time, and actually, funny enough, it's actually quite simple. The UK is a very safe and stable country to come to. And I know, inside the UK, people can moan about the weather and sometimes rising taxes and all the other. But if you look at the UK compared to many, many, many countries around the world, even some of our European counterparts, the UK is incredibly safe and stable. We don't have huge lurches to the left or the right politically. People investing money over here, your money is safe. And especially if you're investing into things like property and so forth, it's a great asset class. It's a very valuable asset class. So if you're looking at a place to set down roots, to run a business, to have a good standard of living, and also the education system in the UK is absolutely, without a doubt, top. People come here, to bring their children here, to go to school here, to go to universities here. That is actually gathering pace. It's not even stopping. And we get asked about it all the time, about people, wanting to bring their children here and go into some of the really, really top schools.
Yeah.
So the reality is the UK is a destination. If you're coming out of other countries which aren't as stable, and trust me, there are many, many of those countries compared to the UK. It's a country that a lot of people are interested in to come here, and that isn't stopping. It's not waning at all.
Interesting, because it's quite easy. Again, if you're just tracking mainstream media, people talking about the repercussions of Brexit, the fallout since COVID, interest rates, inflation rising here.
Sure. But that's a global problem. I mean, the reality is, interest rates have risen in other countries, and inflation's soaring in other countries. So I that is not just a UK specific issue.
Yeah.
Brexit, Brexit has caused challenges, but at the same time, Brexit also has the opportunity to bring in other opportunities. If the UK can get it right, and I'm not saying we have got it right at all, and I'm certainly not going to get into anything political in this, but the reality is that if we can get it right, then being free of red tape and bureaucracy and so forth, and really opening up the UK to opportunities and business opportunities, so that international businesses can come here and pay a fair amount of tax, but really be able to thrive here. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I really do. And a lot of people are interested in coming to the UK. I mean, we get calls all the time about it. So it's a fantastic destination. I think sometimes, like I said, there's too much chatter and noise from the tabloid media.
Yeah, indeed. Well, fear sells, doesn't it? Unfortunately. So
absolutely.
Nice to get perspective that balanced the books there. I wondered whether you could illustrate via a couple of what are the classic scenarios that you come across when people do reach out to you. What stage of life are they at typically, and what questions are immediate at the surface, I suppose, and then maybe we could ask the questions that you think they should be asking.
Sure. Sure, sure. We find, I mean, I'm giving you an example. So let's take an example. I had somebody recently who was running a business in Dubai, very successful one, in the online sphere, looking at coming to the UK, and they were US citizen, didn't want to go back to the US, but wanted to find somewhere as a halfway house between, leaving Dubai and going to the US.
Sure.
Wanted somewhere safe and stable where they could speak the language and so forth, and also a great platform where they can raise finance. It's a great country to run a business, and the UK to them was an immediate draw. They said, with the UK's position in relation to finance and professional services and everything, the UK was absolutely their number one destination to come to. They'd looked at other countries in Europe and Israel and things like that, but the UK, they said, just topped it because it ticked all the boxes in relation to actually setting up, and in this case, the business already set up and expanding that business into the UK. So in that situation, we've got somebody who's clearly an entrepreneur. It's not a startup, it's a company which has been running for 5 years, very successfully. They're looking to come here. So how would we approach that? Well, they've ticked a few of the correct boxes already because they've got a company, and that company has been running for more than 3 years. So it's not because the Home Office can be quite tricky, because in relation to startups, they sometimes don't believe they're going to go anywhere. So in her situation, the visa that we discussed was what we call the UK expansion worker visa. This visa is relatively new. It's only been around for a year and a half. It replaced the old sole representative and overseas company visa, which was a little bit more restrictive. And what it does is it allows the owner, founder, or a senior employee of an overseas company, an established overseas company, to expand that company into the UK by opening a UK subsidiary of the overseas company. And how does one do that? Well, first and foremost, they need to get what we call a corporate footprint in the UK. So that's very easy to do. Can be done very quickly. It's basically opening up a UK subsidiary with Companies House in the UK. Nothing more than that. That's what they call the corporate footprint. Or it can be taking on UK business premises, so taking out a lease or license for UK business premises. And then once that footprint's been established, the company, the overseas company, can apply for what we call a temporary sponsor license, which will allow, once the license has been granted, and there is certain documentation that overseas company needs to be able to, of course, provide. One of those, of course, would be an expansion business plan to show them expanding into the UK and what their plans are for the UK. But once the temporary license has been granted, that allows the overseas company to send to the UK either a senior employee or the owner or the founder, or it's got to be somebody senior, though, who can make decisions and take decisions. Send them to the UK on an expansion worker visa. Now, that visa is only a temporary visa. It lasts for 12 months. It can, though, be extended by a further 12 months. So you've got a two-year window within which to basically get that subsidiary up and running.
Got you.
And whilst they're here, what they need to then do is they need to elevate that sponsor license up to a full sponsor license, one which, of course, can not just cover expansion worker visas, but can cover, of course, a skilled worker visa. And that's the goal, because if the person coming can then transfer from the expansion worker visa onto a 5-year skilled worker visa, they can then remain in the country and then get permanent residence at the end of year 5. So you get you get the temporary license. The temporary license allows you to apply for the temporary expansion worker visa. You're allowed a maximum of 5 people on that license, on that temporary sponsor license. So they could send across 5 executives senior employees. Doesn't have to be one, can be 5.
Yeah.
Most people spend 1 or 2. They can come over on that temporary visa, get the company all up and running, sort out the corporate bank account, sort out the premises, get everything, try and get the business flowing, upgrade that license to a full license, and then transfer themselves over onto a skilled worker visa, which then leads to permanent residence in the UK after 5 years. So it's a great opportunity for overseas companies to expand into the UK. It's a great way for high net worths who are running successful businesses to expand into the UK. Yes, it's a little bit more drawn out because you've got to apply for the temporary license and then the temporary visa and then transfer across. But this is all part of setting up a business, and trying to get it up and running. So you kind of accept that as part of, the process of setting up a UK business. And hopefully within that 2-year period, if you can do all of that, then the business is up and running and the people are here working for the company. And the great thing is that the members who come across, both on the expansion worker or then transfer onto the skilled worker, of course, can bring their families as well. So they can come on across on dependent visas linked to those visas.
Right. Okay. So you can stack on top of, right.
Yeah, you can. Exactly. So that's a great way of expanding an overseas business.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a business to expand, the other opportunity for you is something called the Innovator Founder Visa.
Right.
And that allows a entrepreneur, would have to be somebody with business experience, to open up what they call a innovative business in the United Kingdom. Now, I say innovative, it's very subjective. What I might think is innovative and what you think is innovative could be severely different.
Indeed.
But what you have to do for that is you have to try and get endorsement for your innovative business by one of the 3 endorsing bodies, which basically judge your application to see if consider it to be innovative. And if they consider it to be an innovative business and they decide to endorse the business, then you can be granted, you can then apply for the visa. So it's a 2-stage process.
Interesting.
You apply for endorsement with your wonderful business plan and there's a few other documents you need to provide to show that you are now running something which is considered to be an innovative business in the UK. It's something that nobody else is doing. Now, that's quite a hard thing to do, but, ultimately in the world of tech and things like that, people are coming up with new things all the time. So, for that's quite a useful. And in April this year, they took away the capital requirement for that visa. So you don't have to invest £50,000 anymore. It used to be the case that you had to invest a minimum of 50,000. That's all been washed away now. That doesn't exist. So you don't have to put a capital requirement in, but you still have to get endorsement from one of the endorsing bodies. And it's a tough process. And we're very happy to always help with that and assist with that. But ultimately, if you are a seasoned business person with a really good business plan, then the Innovator Founder Visa may be the one for you. So if you don't have an already established business, then that's a route that you could use. Okay.
Interesting too. Really, really good opportunities and examples there. You made it sound extremely easy, which is so. I want to step in here because, of course, what you've described is a scenario where you can tick all the boxes very easily, and then it's quite an easy decision for the Home Office to come to give you the green light, right?
Yeah, it isn't easy. I will say that for it. Ultimately, there's a lot of documentation, and you really do have to be able to show that you are somebody who has run a business and you know what you're doing. I mean, if you're somebody who's doesn't really have never really run a business and has suddenly decided on the back of a scrap of paper to come up with a business idea and move to the UK, I am sorry to disappoint you, but you may find it a little bit more difficult and challenging than that. But look, I'm not there to dissuade anybody. I'm there to, we're here, and one of the jobs as a immigration lawyer is to help and assist and provide the guidance and support to get you through the process. And ultimately, if you have that correct guidance and support, then hopefully your chances of getting through the process are much, much, much higher.
Sure.
And and it's also, to be blunt, and sometimes my job is to be the bearer of bad news. And if somebody comes to me with a business plan or with documents which just aren't going to cut the mustard, then unfortunately I'm going to say straight to them, this is not going to work. And it's much better to be that way, and give somebody the bad news than them be severely disappointed when they
Absolutely.
get a no. When they get a no.
Yeah.
So we're very, very careful about that. If people, always happy to speak to anybody about it. If people come forward with their ideas and their plans and so forth, not a problem at all. But we are very frank with people about it. If it's not going to work, we'll say this is not going to work. But at the same time, sometimes people come with things which need a little bit of work, and it's not immediate no. It needs assistance, it needs work, and we have very, very good contacts with people who are highly experienced in the planning and so forth for these companies. Getting them off the ground and getting a bit more flesh on the bones for the business plan, and
interesting.
Cash flow and profit forecasts and all things like that. So they can help and assist with that. So it doesn't always have to be the case that the person knows exactly 100% how to approach it.
Yeah,
they can have a business idea, and we can put them in the hands of people who will help them with that and develop and grow that into a position where hopefully they then are in a suitable position to apply for that particular visa and go for endorsement on that visa.
Sure. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I mean, on that, I get the impression maybe that one of the first biggest mistakes people could be making is not having a conversation sooner to help with that planning and get a professional opinion in sooner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, people say, well, as a lawyer, you're always going to say that, but no, seriously, these are not things that you can just hope that you're going to turn it around within a week or whatever. This takes months of planning to do these things. I would say if you're going to look at trying to go for endorsement and you're trying to apply for the expansion worker or whatever, minimum time frame would be 4 months.
Wow. Okay.
Even that would be, could be really tough. It depends on how advanced your planning is. If you're coming with really very little, you've got an idea, but then it's going to take a lot longer than that, because the process in itself, and for the Home Office to when we look at the UK expansion worker visa, the decision on the temporary license takes a minimum of 8 weeks decision from the Home Office. So nice. You're not going to get a quick decision on that. They will scrutinize the documents upside down and around. Say that, and they trust me. They do. People think, people think that they're not going to bother. I mean, I can tell you, they do. They will come back on things. They will challenge things. They will question things. So you have to be very, very careful in preparation when you submit your documents. You've got to make sure it's absolutely at the best possible. You can't afford any mistakes at all, because you will be pulled up if there are discrepancies in what you're putting forward.
Sure.
And in relation to the endorsement, again, the endorsement process can easily take that amount of time, 8 weeks or so. So if you're going to try and come to the UK on one of these routes, pre-planning is absolutely critical to do that, and you need to speak to somebody in the know months before you decide to come. Sure. Please don't try and turn up at Heathrow on I'm here.
Hey.
Yes. Hi, we're here. No, it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. And I think as part of that, not only that is, I'm sure you're aware, but a lot of the work that I do on the relocation front is absolutely hand in glove with the guys on the tax side. And so I would say to anybody coming here, anybody looking at setting up a business here, anybody looking at relocating to the UK, please don't do that without taking absolutely solid tax advice and pre-arrival planning, estate planning advice, and corporate structuring advice before you come here, because you are coming into a different jurisdiction. Yes, it's a safe and stable one, but we will have different tax rules and laws, and certain ways people can run businesses and so forth. And you need that knowledge and that very careful planning and consideration along with the visas and the relocation before you come here. You mustn't just try and turn up. Doesn't work.
No. I mean, I remember the tax guys saying that the time horizon there, ideally they'd love to be having the chats a year and a half in advance of a move, right?
Absolutely,
It just
yeah.
shows it just shows how much thought does need to
Well,
go into these
well,
things.
they need a bit more. They probably need a bit more than I do. They like people turning up in the new tax year rather than, of course, mid-year, because otherwise you can have some difficulties if you turn up in the midst of a tax year. So if they can get you to come in after the 6th of April in each year, then they'd prefer that, and it makes life a lot easier for them.
Sure.
I don't need as much planning as that. But of course, what I have to fit in and slot in with what they're doing on the
Yeah,
pre-arrivals. Well,
yeah.
so my planning, I have to work it in with what they're doing on the tax front. But the reality is that you need a minimum. You need a minimum of 4 to 6 months really to sort visas out if you're coming.
Do it properly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And then when we're talking about stacking these visas out over time to ensure a long-term stay, I'm really interested by this because we know helping expats over, if you do it for long enough, you realize how often family circumstances take over, or so many variables in life that you just can't foresee and can't plan for.
Yeah.
Um, how much flexibility can be found with enough time in advance to account for those moments? So, if someone has made the jump over as a senior member of a business to be the person leading the way there, and then suddenly that person has family circumstances change. Yeah, like how can businesses account for these things?
It isn't easy because ultimately, it will take an example of, let's say, a senior executive comes across from an overseas company to the UK on a skilled worker visa. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you can have a skilled worker visa for either 3 years or 5 years, and the business has a duty if they are sponsoring you, because only companies inside the UK which hold a valid sponsor license can hire people from overseas. That is the rule. It's by law. If you do not have a valid sponsor license and you hire somebody into the UK, you're committing a criminal offence. Simple as that. So you cannot. There are some visas which don't need sponsorship, but if we're talking about the normal worker visa, the normal standard worker visa, if people come across of a high skilled person, they'd be on a skilled worker visa, and the company they work for would have to have a sponsor license. Those companies are responsible on a daily basis for the staff who hold a visa. So let's say you're granted a 5-year visa, because after 5 years of a continual stay inside the UK, you can then apply for permanent residence. So our equivalent of, let's say, the US green card. Okay. And funny enough, they're not green; they're all pink. These cards. Don't know why they call them green cards, but they're not. They're all pink. Even the UK one is pink. But the reality is that after 5 years you can stay here permanently. And what does that mean? You're then entitled to live and work inside the UK without you don't have to go through any form of visa or restriction or immigration restriction. So you're free to come and go.
Mm-hmm.
But whilst you're here on that visa in that 5-year period, you have to comply with the terms of your employment. You have to turn up to work. You have to be paid in accordance with what is set out when they apply for the company applies for your visa. And of course, if there are family circumstances which happen and so forth, someone needs to go back, then there is a duty on the employer over here to inform the Home Office that they need to go back. Now, if it's only a temporary going back, and it's holiday or business meetings or things like that, that's fine. The Home Office don't need to know about that. But if someone needs to go back for a significant period of time, then the Home Office would have to be informed. And the risk with that is that there could be a curtailment of their visa. Their visa could be curtailed. It could be taken from them because they say, well, you're not here, and you're on a visa, and it's not doing what the visa's been granted for. So that is something that you'd have to bear in mind. Also, it costs the company quite a significant amount of money to have those visas because they're paying charges, the cost of the visa itself. There's the cost of the immigration skills charge, which is at the moment £1,000 a year. So there's £5,000 straight away from a company.
Yeah.
There's the cost of the certificate of sponsorship, which is about £200. And there's the cost of the immigration healthcare surcharge, which is at the moment about £3,120 for 5 years. So when you add it all together, you're not going to get much change for an employee or out of, £8,000 to £10,000. So if an employer has made that payment, they're not going to be particularly happy if then, of course, the visa gets curtailed. So you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very careful with that. I think the reality is the good thing about the skilled worker visa is you can bring across with you your family. So your wife or your husband and your children, as long as they are under 18 years old. You just want to be very clear on this. Once a child hits the age of 18, the Home Office considers them to be an adult in their own right. And so they do not have a right, if they haven't come across with their parent before the age of 18, to then come across on a visa. So, and again, let me just clarify this point, because people again get confused on this. They say, well, I come across with my daughter and my son. My daughter's going to come when she came over. She's 16 years old. She turns 18 whilst on the visa. Does that mean that they automatically pull her visa and throw her out of the UK and say you can't be it? No, not at all. If they've started their visa at an age which was pre-18, then they're allowed to carry on for the 5 years. It's irrelevant their age; they can carry on. And But the risk is, let's say somebody does a 3-year visa, comes here 3 years, then disappears back to, say, France or something. And during their time when they're back in France, where they haven't renewed the visa, they don't renew the visa, and they've got to apply for a new one, the daughter turns 18. Well, then you've got a problem. The daughter then can't come back because effectively she's 18 at the time of applying for the visa. So that's where you've just got to be very careful with those kind of things. So, if you've got children who are heading up towards 18, you've got to do some real thinking about keeping them in the UK on that visa, or keeping them on a PBS dependent visa. Otherwise, you can risk actually splitting up your family.
That's made me feel very anxious very quickly, because I could imagine that must happen. That must happen.
Well, I mean, I've got a client at the moment, actually, funny enough, who is French. His daughter is 19. She's at university in the United States of America. His 2 other daughters are at school in England. He's on a skilled worker visa. His daughters and wife are on PBS dependent visas. His daughter in the US at university did not come with the family to the UK because she wanted to stay in the US at university there. So she does not have a visa, a PBS dependent visa linked to her father's visa, and didn't get one before the age of she turned 18. So actually, the father asked me the other day, well, what happens to her once she finishes university? And I said, well, unfortunately, her choice is she has to go and live in France. She cannot come to join the family in the United Kingdom. It's not possible unless, of course, she looks to find a job in the UK or sponsorship in the UK by a UK company, which will then sponsor her on her own visa. But yes, in that situation, there is a chance that ultimately, if she can't get sponsorship and she can't get a job in the UK, she will be back in France, living and working in France, and will not be able to come to the UK with her family. So yeah, you can find situations like that. I mean, they're quite rare, because most times the parents bring the children over and they stay on a visa and they stay inside the UK. But yeah, it can happen. I mean, you have to do a lot of thinking and pre-planning with immigration. You've got to work out what your long-term plan is. Sure. And I say this to everybody when you come here. In order to get permanent residence, you need to be in the UK for a continual period of 5 years. Okay, that's the rule. There are a couple of visas, the Global Talent Visa and the Innovator Founder Visa, which allow you to accelerate your ability to get permanent residence within a 3-year period if you hit certain targets. Okay, but they're rare. Those 2 visas stand basically on their own in their own category. Outside of that, all visas basically take really 5 years. to get permanent residence. And once you have permanent residence in the UK, you can then apply to naturalize and become a British citizen once you've held permanent residence for a minimum period of 12 months.
Okay.
So I say to most people, you're looking at a 6-year period. So you've got to plan for the next 6 years. If you come, you do your 5 years on your visa, you then apply for your permanent residence or indefinite leave to remain, we call it ILR. If anybody hears those letters, and then once you have that permanent residence, you can then apply for the British to naturalize and become a British citizen. So you're looking at a 6-year period, but there's something that you have to be very careful about with this. The amount of time that you spend inside the United Kingdom. And this is things that people get wrong all the time. In relation to, there are 2 very distinct routes, which you have to bear in mind if you want to get British citizenship at the end of year 6, or if you just want to get permanent residence and you don't want to get another passport. The rule is as follows. If you only want to get permanent residence at the end of year 5 and you have no intention of going on to become a British citizen, the rule is you must not be outside the UK for more than 180 days a year in each 12-month rolling period. So over the 5 years, 180 days a year. So it's quite generous. 6 months, you're allowed to be outside the UK. But the other 185 days, you have to be inside the UK, okay? And that's in each 12-month rolling block, okay? And then you can then apply for permanent residence at the end of year 5, and ultimately, you've got your permanent residence and you can live and work here, but you're not a citizen. Mm-hmm. If you want to become a naturalized citizen, then the rule is much tougher. In the 5 years that you are on your visa inside the UK, you must not be outside the UK for more than 450 days in aggregate over the 5-year period. Oh. Now, you can play around with it a bit. So you could have a year where you're out for 100.
Okay.
Out for 100 days, but then you've got to be very careful. You've got 350 to play with the other 4 years. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're not out for more than 450 days in aggregate over those 5 years, you can then apply for permanent residence at the end of year 5.
Yeah.
And then you then have to hold that permanent residence for 12 months. But in that 12-month period, you must not be outside the UK for more than 90 days. And it's a strict 90 days. And that's ahead of the application for naturalization. So when somebody says to me, I want to naturalize, you have to look back over the last 12 months and have they been outside the UK for more than 90 days? If they've been outside for more than 90 days, then you can't naturalize. It's a very strict, there's very strict rules. So for the naturalization, 450 and then 90, and then you can naturalize at the end of year 6. So that's the way. That's the way it works.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, isn't it? The Zoom's going to end, so I'm going to send you another link so we can keep going and round up. Very, very good stuff, Charles. I'll catch you on the other side again, okay? Just look out for the link.
No problem.
I mean, actually, the lines are clear as day when they're written down in front of you like that. But I can definitely see how easy it would be for people to overlap and to get those days wrong, which probably applies to pretty much everything we've spoken today, because you've explained these things so clearly, Charles, so clearly. And I can imagine people sitting back thinking, well, yeah, it's just a few forms to fill in. As long as I tick these boxes, we'll be fine.
Yeah, a little bit of knowledge is a very dangerous thing, unfortunately, in the world of immigration law. And I get this all the time from people. People saying, they're online forms. I can do it myself. They are online forms, and absolutely, you can do it yourself if you want to try. But the reality is the devil with all these things is in the detail. And it is very, very easy to get things wrong. It's very easy to miss out critical documents. It's very easy to miss out things in the legislation where, if you, timing wise, depending on when you send your application and so forth, if you haven't complied with certain things, then the application can be automatically void. So unless you really know what you're doing, my advice to people would always be to please seek professional help with this. I'll give you an example, just a quick one. I had a client recently who's American. They had been in the UK on a 5-year skilled worker visa. They decided at the end of their 5-year skilled worker visa to, in their wisdom, to what they thought was the right to apply for naturalization straight away rather than apply for permanent residence. So what they did is they applied to naturalize, and they waited 9 months and didn't hear anything until the Home Office came back and said to them, "I'm very sorry, but you've made the wrong application." Well, the fallout from that was absolutely catastrophic, and I'll explain why. Because you cannot apply to naturalize before you have permanent residence. So what this person did is they'd been in the UK. They'd been legally here on a visa. They'd done their 5 years. They thought, this is fantastic. We're all ready to go. I'm going to get I'm going to be able to stay in the UK. And because they made the wrong application and they hadn't effectively done it in the right time frame, what happened is their visa expired. They were actually waiting for an answer on their naturalization application illegally inside the UK. So they were here for 9 months illegally. The Home Office then got in touch with them and said, well, you're not allowed to naturalize, but worse than that, you've now been here illegally, because they immediately realized, as soon as the Home Office had said, you can't naturalize, you've got to get permanent residence. So they immediately made an application for permanent residence. They said, nope, you cannot do that because you've been here illegally, and you need to leave the UK immediately. And they now have a ban from coming back into the UK for 12 months. Yep, and it's had a serious impact on their business and everything, because they have broken the UK immigration rules, and they are now not allowed back in, and they're now on the record with the Home Office as being an overstayer. So it's really serious ramification for them and their company. It's a criminal offence, and it was all because they thought they knew what they were doing. They submitted the wrong form, and disaster ensued. So it's a salutary lesson to people. It really is. Please don't try to do these things on your own. You need help. We're the reason we do the level of training we do is because we know how to do these things. They look simple. They're not, and you need that expertise and that experience to help you. If the costing wise, that person now has got to go through a staggering amount of hoops to get back into the UK. It's going to cost him so much more money than if he just allowed us to do it for him when the time came around. So it's a false economy. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to do with these things. But on the bright side, we're here to help. We're always happy to have an initial chat with people. I'm always happy to have an initial chat with people, and if they want to have a little bit of a steer on what they do and so forth, we're always happy to do that. And so if people want to get in touch, you can do that by email. And that's, Collier Bristow is the name of the law firm. I'm Charles Avens. I'm the head of immigration. If people email me at charles.avens@collierbristow.com, then I'm always happy to answer questions and kind of push people on the right path going forward. But I hope it's been a bit of a quick canter through. There's lots of visas, there's lots of different routes. And so, they've all got different criteria. But we can always try and find a way. We'll always try and find a solution. If you want to come to the UK, definitely.
Charles, very, very well rounded up there. Thank you for going into the different case examples, giving really clear instructions too, where people can sort of start thinking about these things. So, which isn't easy, I think, for anything legal.
So hats off.
We
to you
try
there,
to
sir.
make it.
Yeah.
We try to make it easy. I mean, hopefully we're doing a good job if we make it look easy. That's
Exactly.
that's the good thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Side of mastery right there.
But Ben, thank you so much for having me on today. It's been a real privilege. So thank you very much indeed.
No, glad you enjoyed it. I'll put as many links as I can in the description so people can find you quickly and easily. Thanks for jumping on again, and I'll catch you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you. Bye-bye.